All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to uncover the invisible behavioral scripts that are basically running our daily interactions completely under our noses. Have you ever wondered what's really going on beneath the surface of a simple office chat or maybe a highly structured team check-in? Well, we are pulling back the curtain on the hidden social operating system that actually dictates exactly how we connect, how we work, and honestly, how we sometimes spectacularly fail. I want you to think back to your last, just completely inefficient workplace meeting. You know the one. Everyone is talking in circles, literally no real decisions are being made, yet everyone seems strangely perfectly content to just play their part. Ask yourself this. Why do we naturally gravitate toward these repetitive loops instead of just getting things done? Why is actual problem solving so often shoved aside for familiar, comfortable chatter? Which brings us to Section 1, the hidden social code. To really get this, we've got to look at Eric Berne's classic behavioral model. It reveals that human interaction essentially runs on a dual-layer operating system. See, we aren't just communicating, we're constantly toggling between two very different invisible networks. On the one hand, you have the procedural layer. This is our rational, outcome-focused engine, what Berne calls the adult state, where we're just optimizing for efficiency to get from point A to point B. But running right parallel to that is the ritual layer. This mode is totally symbolic, heavily scripted, and operates in a parent or child state. In this mode, we aren't trying to solve a problem at all. We're actually optimizing for belonging and social safety. And here is the absolute kicker. Most of the talking we do every single day, it's not to fix things. It is simply stability maintenance. We run these behavioral scripts just to keep our social equilibrium intact. Think about it. When you say, "Hey, how are you?" and your coworker says, "Fine, how are you?" You aren't actually exchanging data. You're performing a ritual. You're basically saying, "Hey, we're safe, and the structure of our relationship is intact." Moving on to Section 2, the predictability trap. Let's look at the psychology here. Why on earth are we so addicted to these repetitive scripts, even when they totally kill our productivity? Well, it boils down to something called predictability comfort bias. As humans, we have a profound, deeply wired preference for predictable interaction patterns. We crave them, even when they are terribly inefficient. We run these scripts because they massively reduce our anxiety. They completely remove the heavy cognitive load of having to make new decisions. Honestly, it's just so much easier for our brains to run a pre-written social script than to actively engage in complex problem solving. Because of this comfort bias, our social systems have this massive structural default. They will always, and I mean always, default back to ritual interactions unless we actively and deliberately force them into procedural efficiency. If you don't aggressively steer a group towards a specific goal, they're just going to sink right back into the warm comfort of their rituals. But rituals aren't just about feeling comfortable. They are absolutely about power. Rituals define our social boundaries. The people who get to define or enforce these rituals, they gain immense social authority. They literally hold the power of inclusion or exclusion. They create behavioral conditioning leverage over the entire group, constantly reinforcing everyone's identity, the whole who I am within a social system. Simply put, if you control the rituals, you control the boundaries of social acceptance. All right, Section 3, when systems collapse. So what happens when this deep craving for social comfort makes our OS glitch out in really high-stakes environments? Well, honestly, it's a disaster. If you look across completely different domains, a universal truth pops out. In financial trading, falling back on habitual behaviors leads to incredibly predictable financial losses. In chess, relying purely on memorized opening rituals makes a player highly exploitable. In cybersecurity, those lazy password rituals, like people using password 123 year after year, are exactly what attackers exploit when procedural protocols aren't enforced. And in the military, over-ritualizing hierarchy totally kills operational adaptability. Across the board, relying on a ritual instead of a clear procedure when the stakes are high almost always leads to failure. Which leads us to the ultimate collapse condition. A system is inevitably going to degrade when we let our emotional attachment to these symbolic social scripts completely override rational problem solving. Whenever maintaining our status and keeping up our social comfort becomes more important than optimizing for the actual outcome, the system breaks. Every time. This takes us to Section 4, the modern systems update.
Now, right about now, you might be thinking, okay, so we just need to ruthlessly eradicate all rituals and become perfect, machine-like optimizers. But modern behavioral science actually drops a major plot twist here. Rituals are not inherently bad. They aren't just annoying inefficiencies that we need to squash. In large systems, they are absolutely vital coordination protocols. They represent this essential trade-off between pure, cold procedural efficiency and the group stability we actually need to function. They reduce the emotional and cognitive friction of just working together.
So, the real distinction we have to make today isn't just procedure versus ritual, it's separating the adaptive from the maladaptive rituals. That's the real game changer. We have to figure out, is a ritual adaptive? Meaning, is it actively helping team coordination and reducing emotional load? Or is it maladaptive? Is it just acting as a roadblock, blocking optimization, and bogging the whole system down? Finally, Section 5, Mastering the Mode Switch. Okay, so how do we actually use this? How do we hack this dual-layer OS to optimize our teams, our companies, and frankly, our relationships? Well, here's your playbook. You have to master the mode switch by following 4 steps. Number 1, actively detect when a ritual is blocking progress. You got to notice those repeating loops. Number 2, deliberately shift the communication into an adult state, procedural mode, to actually resolve the task. Number 3, carefully preserve those adaptive rituals, the ones that keep your team united and emotionally grounded. And number 4, detach yourself emotionally from the inefficient social scripts that just aren't serving the goal anymore. I want you to really take this framework into your world today. Start looking out for those invisible scripts that are quietly running the show in your office or even in your personal life. Next time you're in a high-stakes interaction, pause and ask yourself, are you actually solving a problem right now, or are you just blindly running a script? Because once you can actually see the operating system, you finally have the power to reprogram it.